Well, I cannot believe that I've been asked about my iRating at the Nürburgring, so yeah, let me explain. What if I told you that there is a form of gaming that is nearly beyond the explainable? The admiration of automobiles' finest artwork right into our homes, into our bedrooms. From high emotions and ambitions to inspirations for goals and a place to start a lot of dreams. Dreams about achieving the impossible. Dreams about becoming a racing driver, to own a car we always wished to own, to make all of this accessible for not only the rich, to be part of something that was otherwise almost impossible to be part of.
But in general, I think I was probably a bit more relaxed on the real racetrack.
A playground for car enthusiasts.
だっていうのは
理論で全部理解されてらっしゃるんですよ。
It's all this that makes my favorite niche of gaming so respected and special. My car is in a garage, which means I have no way to get from A to B. I have no way to get to the racing track. However, there was a time where I didn't even have a car, neither did I ever calculate it in. I used to be completely carless and it didn't matter. For us to be able to drive virtually was the only way. If you grew up in the early 2000s or even late 90s, you have been blessed with the start of an entire new niche in gaming. My earliest memories in life I had was remembering the flashy Gran Turismo commercial on TV. Both Dad and I have seen it, and my dad knew we had to get a PlayStation. Now, from here, if you were a kid, the chance was high that your interest in what cars were able to do in games was being more dramatized in the edgelord era of the early 2000s. However, even though racing games turned into a rebellious form of Y2K arcade racing, it was still legendary and historical at its time, but it still had its roots from the idea of simulating driving a car as immersive as possible. The first few titles of Need for Speed show that, especially if you look at how the games looked in comparison to what was seen as a simulator back then. Hardcore racing car nerd dads would own this, and if you were blessed with the GigaChat dad of a father like those, you were able to play some of the most historical pieces in gaming history, preferably with one of the most oldest ancient steering wheels in Simracing history. It was a blast. Dude, this game had one of the most banging soundtracks, but speaking about banging soundtracks,
This is IndyCar Racing 2.
the creators of one of the most respected simulators already cooked back in the 80s and 90s to deliver a game I will never forget playing, thanks to my father owning this piece of art. Now, this, guys, was one of the first games Papyrus has released with what was by its time the most realistic experience to drive IndyCar and NASCAR. And again, what a competitive soundtrack. Anyways, Dave Kammer is a legend for giving birth to something that has grown into what we know today as iRacing. Hate it or love it, to date, it's still one of the most respected sim racing titles and one of the most played that offers also the most competitive racing. For competitive racing to be born, gaming had to still go through a few eras to achieve this. While tech was getting more and more advanced, and yes, the sim racing gear we know now to date is beyond what anyone could have ever dreamt of, the improving tech and graphics was not what blew me away, sort of. So what blew me away was actually my first MMORPG, massive multiplayer online game I've played, and to meet up with your friends from school afterwards online in a virtual world for you to explore it and go on adventures was something that completely turned my world around and turned me into an absolute nerd, an absolute gamer. And for me, this made games so much more alive. It was like you were entering an entirely different world. It was like you were able to meet friends there and challenge friends and compete with them, which that was completely new to me. And I think for sim racing to be competitive, games had to go through this era because we realized the importance of people all around the world wanting to play together. The last real extreme MMORPG experience that I had, it was around Burning Crusade, and that's never gonna come back, right? That's gone. This completely pulled the ground under my feet. I was so deep into massive multiplayer online worlds through Burning Crusade, joining a guild, living in an entirely different world, and being so immersed as this world did not just happen on a screen for me. It was like I was in a goddamn game. The next big gaming experience that I had for me was sim racing. And to get into iRacing and to, really dive down into this world, I think that's something I wish more people would explore. And there's so much more behind this than just, oh, this is a racing game. Let's just go straight into it. Now, why this comparison, you ask? And, well, I give this comparison because to me, sim racing did the exact same thing. You were able to compete with anyone around the world at any time of day with your friends, form a team, get into a team, get sponsored, get seen by sponsors. This was like the racing world, but virtually, and a motorsport simulation completely different, not just in terms of realism, but also everything around it almost.
Sag, was du machst.
Hi, ich bin Moritz Löhner, 22 Jahre alt. Ich fahre eine DTM Trophy, den schönen roten BMW hier. Und ich habe es geschafft, in den echten Motorsport durch Simracing zu kommen. Also ich habe da Meisterschaften gewonnen und habe da die Chance bekommen, dann eben in echten Motorsport dann zu betreiben.
Okay, also das heißt wirklich, du bist quasi vom PC zum Motorsport gekommen, nicht andersrum. Also habe ich es richtig verstanden?
Genau so rum, ja.
And with that immersion comes feeling like you're actually there. You're at the starting grid and you can mess it up anytime. Everything is on the line. There's this fear every time you do a race that you can mess up at any time, lose your rating or lose it for your team, or all the training and practice was for nothing. And this plays a huge factor into why this feels so realistic and immersive. We're both sim racers and we both know this feeling of you're at the starting grid and there's a lot on the line, right? And I feel like that's an experience that sim racing is really extremely good in selling. You're on a starting grid, and no matter if it's an esports race or just it's about iRacing even, you get that adrenaline rush at the starting line. So I really wanted to hear from you, who's done both, the virtual world and the real world. That moment when you are at the starting grid in the sim and in real life, do they compare? And I want you to think about the most intense situations.
Oh, it's quite similar, I would say. Like there's a lot of pressure in sim racing, of course, because the grids are so much more tighter and more compressed. So every tiny little mistake in sim racing costs you a lot of time. Whereas in real life, it's a little bit more relaxed. Like you see gaps usually in those competitions are a bit bigger. It's not as crazy, like my nerves are not that, or were not that high in real life racing, but for sure there's other aspects that come in because it's easier to get like damage on the car and all that. But so in that sense it's similar in terms of nerves, like being on the grid and then waiting for the race to start. It also depends, of course, where you're starting from. If you're starting at the front, your nerves are quite a lot higher because there's a lot more to lose. But in general, I think I was probably a bit more relaxed on the real racetrack. There's more breathing room for you to make mistakes, even though you shouldn't make mistakes, but there is a bit more going on. Like when I'm sitting in my sim back here, there's nothing. Like I'm in my room, everything is quiet, and then I'm waiting for the race start. There's no distraction. Whereas on the grid in real life, there's always commentators coming to you. There's people walking around, my family, friends, maybe being in front of the car, giving me the last thumbs up before they have to leave the grid. So you're a little bit distracted before the actual start, and that helps actually a little bit with getting the nerves down. Yeah.
I feel like when people ask like how close is it to the sim and stuff, it's like it will never be the exact same. That's the thing.
No, everyone has a different viewpoint of that as well.
Exactly. But what I think both where they have parallels is exactly the competition, right? And the nerve-wracking racing that you get, because the racing, like we all always say, in sim racing is real. That's what's so cool about sim racing. And exactly this is what keeps us playing. And yes, the physics are realistic and the cars are realistic and there needs to be some form of realism, but the close racing and the challenges, the competition that you have, the races that are available all over the day, that's exactly what keeps us coming back, because we love racing. It's not like any other game where you play FIFA and because you play FIFA, your skill transfers into the real world and you're mega good at playing football all of a sudden. But with sim racing, that's different. With sim racing, you drive on a sim, let's say iRacing, Race Room, or AC or ACC. You learn the tracks and you learn how the car behaves. There are people that are good drivers, they're really skilled and professional drivers, and there are people that are good at learning a track. I know lots of people don't like to hear it, but Max Verstappen, right? Max drives insanely quick.
Incredible driver. With everything he does, he has the natural talent and the willing to put everything at it with the practice and everything to maximize everything in any aspect. And you can see, like, he's good in sim racing, he's good in a GT3 car, he's good in Formula 1, and that's what makes a good driver.
でも僕からしたら本当にすごい早くピックアップして、そのさらに何をどうしたらこうなるっていうのを理解されてたんで、それがすごいびっくりしましたね。
もうこのね20年ぐらい毎日車の動きについて考えてますから、だからそうですね、こうやったらきっとこう動くはずだっていうのは
理論で全部もう理解されてらっしゃるんですよ。
And thanks to these drivers and their feedback and their natural talent of jumping into the car and taking this to the next level, the pioneers that go the extra mile to jump into the car themselves to try it out, just to give us the experience as a player, as a sim racer, to get the most realistic representation of what it feels like. It's amazing. And while driving all of these sims, you acquire a certain surface knowledge of how it's going to feel in a real car. And, you know, the way that you drive it, the way that you learn how to drive the apex, braking points, all of this will help you in real life. Now, for me, I experienced this too. I'm by no means a professional racing driver or a professional sim racer. Oh, but never mind. I said that, man. I took this knowledge that I had from the sim, and it helped me to drift the car the first day, and it helped me to get myself around the track, braking, how the car reacts. That's something I've learned from iRacing. And that competition I was talking about in iRacing doesn't just stop at iRacing. Now, if you go to Assetto Corsa and, you know, there's a drifting community, grassroots drifting, a huge grassroots community, but also this, of course, gets to a very high level of drifting and competing. But, of course, you don't have to compete. If that's not what you want to do, the physics and the modability of these games offer you to just have fun and enjoy, and, you know, don't race close, and you can legitimately just load up every car. Like I said, every car you've dreamt of, you wanted to drive, you wanted to own, load it up, modify it yourself, get a pair of rims on that you always wanted to slap on that car and go have a ride. I think for a lot of enthusiasts, it's a way to get into motorsports, even if that's just track days, right? You learn something. You get like your seat time in the sim, and then you take it to to the track and you have some nice track days, right?
But I'm telling you, doing track days and like the easy stuff, the non-professional stuff, is a lot more fun than going into professional racing. Of course, the experience you can tell of this and the experience you get out of this is a lot higher, but you will not be able to enjoy it because obviously you drive to win. And so if you do track days with your car and with friends and whatever, you will have so much more fun than going into professional racing. And I think that's also sometimes more valuable than just going professionally racing. And because in the end you need to be in the top 0.001% or be incredibly lucky to actually make a living or anything out of it. It's just a lot of money, and then you can't even really enjoy it because of the competition. So if you have that money, spend it on a nice track day with your own car and you'll have a lot more fun than professional racing.
And this entire rabbit hole is why it is so respected, even outside of gaming, even for motorsport enthusiasts and car enthusiasts. This is why I got asked at the Nürburgring randomly by a person what my iRating was, because they figured out I played iRacing. People sort of can judge your skill by that. And it has some relevancy, which is funny to me because it is a game, but somehow still so much more. And I guess that's also why people get a little bit emotional if you call it a game. But let's be honest, guys, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what it is. It's sim racing and we love it. And it doesn't matter what sim it is. You enjoy what you want to enjoy. And if you find pleasure in whatever sim and that's what gets you started, kudos to you. And I hope you will have a blast in the journey that is ahead of you. Yeah, guys, thanks so much for watching the video until here. I want to thank everyone who watches my videos to the fullest. I want to thank you guys for supporting the channel so much. And I didn't have a car, so I thought, hey, this is definitely something I wanted to talk about. And I hope you enjoyed this little documentary type, gaming type thing. So yeah. If you can, support the channel, drop a follow, drop a like, tell me about your sim racing, your biggest sim racing experiences, and I would love to hear them. Drop them down in the comment and see you in the next video, and until then, bye bye!